I done been through it all, man. Wars in my head, thinking that I'm better dead. I get panic attacks every time I'm asleep. I've been waking up screaming and covered in sweat. Anxiety's killing me, made me depressed. But it's one thing I look at as something to test me, to see if I wanted to see how I'll get it. So I'm never sweating the days I don't rest, which is every night I've been working. Every night I've been...
The doctor walks in and he said, "That's your daughter's face." It looked like somebody had been shot in the face with a cannon.
1,000 twitches a day, grandma's for an hour and a half. He was in an ambulance 42 times in the first 4.5 years of his life.
I was addicted to opiates and on antidepressants that made me want to kill myself.
I spent days in bed.
I was taking 7 opioids a day.
Every day we'd see her just deteriorating.
12 different pharmaceuticals and nothing was working. It just kept getting worse. I couldn't handle it anymore.
I just got really desperate.
Do anything you can.
Until I went on Facebook and I saw things about CBD.
Cannabidiol, or CBD, is a compound commonly found in the cannabis plant.
Go freaking look at the research. Stop saying that there's no evidence. There is evidence, and it's documented.
We're now really beginning to apply modern science to cannabis.
There's a lot of research with CBD.
CBD for the last 40 years has been bred out of cannabis because it basically curbs the high for that recreational purpose.
At first, I was actually really scared to try CBD.
We slowly got off of all of the opioids that I was on.
Come on, snap out of it, Jaden. First day I gave it to Jaden, it was the first day I ever seen my son not have a seizure in his life.
It has given me my life back.
How fast was the change?
Oh, overnight.
Cannabis is a potent anti-inflammatory and a pain reliever.
We're not really getting the information that we need about these things.
If you treat breast cancer with cannabis, you block the cancer cell's ability to migrate.
People don't know about it, and they don't really want to know about it.
Cannabis is extremely effective in treating a wide variety of conditions.
Arthritis,
diabetes,
multiple sclerosis.
I was diagnosed with bone tumors. That's what it did to my face.
PTSD, fibromyalgia,
Anxiety, endometriosis, cancer.
It blocks epileptic attacks. How could it be that one remedy could actually help so many different things?
There's an entire system in our body that's activated by cannabis molecules.
It's a system that regulates a lot of different processes.
The system is located in every organ.
It seems that our bodies have evolved to work with this plant.
The research is phenomenal.
Results are incredible. The pharmaceutical drugs that we prescribe have a lot more risk to them. Cannabis medicine has created amazing results for patients.
She's on absolutely no medications besides the cannabis oil.
You're a young lady, you're growing like a weed.
This is a human rights issue.
Because it helped me, other kids should have a chance to be helped too.
Nobody's ever died from the cannabis plant in any quantity.
I probably could have saved more lives.
We are going to see people take responsibility for their own health.
We've all taken control of our own medical journey.
I feel like I was lucky to have the tumor, or else I wouldn't be doing any of this.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Full Spectrum Veteran. So that trailer that we just watched, CBD Nation by David Jakubovic, we're going to be talking about that for a little while tonight. It's a documentary that me and Mike love. We've been waiting to talk about for a while. So we decided we're finally going to do that here to start the new year off. Mike, so kind of getting into it right away, you know, we have a quote right away by a doctor. And it kind of hooked me right from the very beginning, because I remember originally you were the one that had told me about this documentary to watch. How did you say you found it? I forget.
I follow a few different people on social media that are in the industry. Steve D'Angelo and his brother Andrew from Harborside. Some of the other people that are around the documentary, and they started to post it. I saw it. Just happened to have a little bit of free time the other night and watched it, and it was epic. It's what everybody needs to see, especially those skeptics, those people who don't know that there's that much research and studies out there, or just refuse because of the stigma that it's always carried. But yeah, it's a pretty epic documentary that as you'll see as we go through.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, right from the very beginning, as far as research goes, the very first quote, very first thing you see as soon as you get into the documentary, she says, "Go frickin' look at the research yourself. It's documented, and if you choose not to look at it, it's no longer ignorance, it's arrogance." And that was
Truth.
pretty important and pretty powerful to kind of start everything off with. I can't remember her name, but honestly, I don't remember if I saw her anywhere else in the documentary after that one quote. But it was pretty powerful, and at this point, it is true. There is so much research out there that's just mind-boggling that you still have these people that assume it's still just some kind of drug at this point, and that there isn't anything more to it. And if it happens to have medical benefits, then it's all some coincidence and blah, blah, blah.
Absolutely.
So one of the first scenes that it kind of goes into after that quote is that lady that was testing the mussels in the ground.
That was mind blowing.
Yeah, I've never even heard of something like that.
I never ever would have thought of after testing the mussels in the water. Where it was in New York, I believe, right?
I don't remember.
I can't remember where it was, but
I don't remember seeing the location, to be honest. I remember it showing her name, and I don't remember it showing the location, but I'm sure it would have had to have. But
I mean, it's so obvious too, and you never think about it. But once they test and find all of those various drugs in there that we discard through septic systems and water, it's mind blowing to think that these mollusks and mussels are congesting it all.
So basically, what they're doing, for those of you that haven't had the opportunity to watch the documentary, they plant mussels down into the ground right on the edge of a shoreline, and the goal is to test the water and sources in the test the sources in the water and see what they find. And so what they do is they leave the mussels in there in the ground for about 3 months, and then they go and grab them, bring them back to the lab, and then they harvest them. She basically described it as making a milkshake, and they kind of blend the mussels all up, and then they send that off to a lab and test it to see what they get for results. And in the mussels they test, they find things, and she listed things off: antibiotics, there were antidepressants, oxycodone.
Oh my God, yeah.
They found chemo meds in there,
which is the most dangerous.
Yeah, chemo meds they're cancer causing by themselves. So the fact that they were able to find chemo meds in the water that they're, and not just them, but that's the water source now. The water source is now littered with things like that. So you said it's so simple, and it's true. I never would have thought of something like that. It's pretty crazy. It's great that we have marine biologists and things like that that know that kind of stuff, because it was such an easy way. It seemed, it was such a perfect way to be able to get a snapshot of what it looks like.
And that statistic that followed was just as powerful as that study, where the United States is 5% of the world's population, but uses 75% of the prescription drugs in the world. Like, we see that, but to statistically hear it is staggering.
I feel like there's almost nobody not on some type of medication these days.
Just cannabis, that's it.
Yeah.
Cannabis is all I take.
Yep. I feel like everybody's on some kind of pill, everything. It's all commonplace now. There's so many medications and I don't mean basic pain pills like ibuprofen and stuff like that. I mean prescribed medication, like in the quote. I never would have thought that we would encompass so much of the overall percentage of the world. 5% population, 75% use. It's just, I don't even understand what the math is behind that to be able to process that properly,
It's similar to prison statistics. in the United States.
Yeah.
You know, it's that staggering.
Yeah. It's just crazy, you know, because they kind of hit us real quick and real early in this documentary with some pretty messed up statistics, you know, and the documentary is not necessarily argumentative in any way, but it definitely lays the facts down as far as, you know, if you want to keep a stigma on medical cannabis, you know, then here's a whole lot of reasons why there's some other things that need stigmas that we don't talk about, you know.
Yeah. You needed to come with that left and right hook at the beginning so people stayed straight in line to watch the rest of it, because the whole documentary is packed with statistics and research, but it's not overwhelming. It's not hard to watch. It's real easy, and it gives a lot of informative graphics as well to show you the endocannabinoid system, the difference between THC and CBD, like those. So it's informative in all levels for sure.
I really like the graphics. It actually really added to the documentary. They were done real well. It's always nice when something's presented other than just with text on the screen, you know. So I thought that they did do a really good job with the charts and everything like that. After that, we start getting into a couple of the interviews with, you know, prior prescription users that have now switched over, whether they use THC or CBD. I did notice there are a few times throughout the documentary they just referred to it as cannabis oil, and weren't specific on THC or CBD. Did you notice that a couple times too?
I think when they were calling it cannabis oil, I think it was probably a ratio product, THC and CBD, most likely, because that seems to be the tincture most are subscribed.
Mm-hmm.
Because you do need THC in the full spectrum level of it. Just how much do you need? You know?
Yeah, it's a good point. Because there were some people that specifically called it CBD. You know what I mean? And so I'm wondering if maybe when
CBD
they were
being the hemp oil, cannabis oil being, you know, the above 0.3%.
Right.
0.03%. I'm sorry. Well, I mean, that that first interview with that young girl, it blew me away. The drugs that she was on, the amount of drugs that she was prescribed at her age for depression and anxiety, and the fact that they went through all of these prescriptions for her, and at the very end she states, and then they just gave me Lyrica because there was nothing left to give me.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Lyrica is what you give people like me who are amputees when they have phantom pains, or people who have fibromyalgia, because it's a nerve blocker or some way like that. But it just doesn't work that way for me, and it just didn't make me. It didn't help me with phantom pains in any way. Cannabis and CBD are still to this day the only thing that helps me with phantom pains on that level. But that to prescribe this young woman all of these horrendous synthetics, and I mean Zoloft, Effexor, Clozapam, Ativan, Xanax, Wellbutrin, Trazodone, Lyrica, Dexedrine, and then I mean that alone is suicide.
Mm-hmm.
It's murder. You're murdering that girl.
Yeah, it was a bummer too because there's so many people that have that similar story that she had. And, you know, a lot of the people that we know with that similar story were people in the military generally. So for me, I think it was kind of nice to see the documentary that had a little bit of both, because I think I kind of naturally gravitate towards documentaries that have some kind of veteran aspect to it. You know what I mean? Not always.
And how many veterans can relate to this woman?
That was my point. I'm sitting
Yeah.
there and I'm watching, and she's rattling them all off, and the only one that I didn't take at some point out of that whole list was Dexedrine, which she had said that was an ADHD med for focusing, because some of the other medications that they had her on had her so out of focus that they needed to put her on a medication to focus.
I'm surprised they didn't put her on Adderall for ADHD. You know, why not give her the cherry on top of the parfait? You know.
Yeah, I just finished up my degree last month, and one of the things I had to write about in my, well, I didn't have to write about, but in my final thesis, obviously, I wanted to write about decriminalization, legalization of cannabis, 15-page research report, and everything like that. But one thing that I talked about pretty substantially when I got to the section about kind of CBD, THC versus prescription medication was kind of one whole topic in the paper. And I talked a lot about, you know, a lot of veterans specifically because that was the tone of the paper. But I used to talk about I was talking about being prescribed medications to help with some of the side effects of other medications, which, as she said, you know, with Dexedrine. And I guess I don't know, maybe it's bad, but outside of the military, like, I didn't maybe consider that everybody was being almost prescribed and handled the exact same way.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, I think that was an
Just think of
important,
that, though,
that was an important realization for me, because I know that I have a giant laundry list of pills that I've taken over the years. And I guess I always just thought that was some freaking, I don't know, some military thing. You know what I mean? But I mean, I've seen civilian doctors that did similar shit, but I always couldn't help but wonder if maybe they were just giving me similar shit because that's what my history already was.
Like when
from the
a
other
doctor
doctors.
tells you he's got to give you a drug to counteract a side effect of another drug, like that alone should be one of the largest red flags out the gate. You know what I mean? Because that's like you have an itch on your back, so you scratch it with a rifle. You know what I mean? It makes no sense to me. It's you if you're having side effects from the first drug, it's not meant for the body. It's not. There's just something not working. You know, it's not jiving with your system.
Yeah, I was looking up Zofran because Zofran's a pretty common one that, you know, they would prescribe you anytime you had something that's going to potentially make you sick or upset your stomach or something like that. And Zofran, it has its own side effect list. You know what I mean? So you're already dealing with side effects, and then you're dealing with compounding side effects as well with some of these medications, especially if they're being taken at the same time. And then if you're seeing one doctor for one thing and one doctor for another thing, and they're not talking to each other and there's not proper records of the medication, that's when all the overdosing can happen. I had the VA for a minute. I had the VA giving me one whole regimen of pain pills while I was seeing another civilian doctor that was giving me a whole nother regimen of pain pills. And I had,
Knowing that you were on the set, like did each doctor know that what you were getting from each other?
yeah, and I think what they were kind of, it almost seemed like they were, because I was going through a spurt of um bad like primary care doctors at that time. So I was kind of jumping around. So part of it, I guess, was kind of my fault. I can't blame the doctors specifically, but there wasn't as much miscommunication as they made it out to be. You know what I mean? Like, because
Right.
when I went to go finally see that pain management doctor, he was showing me the systems and stuff on the computer. Like, he was really good at, that's one thing I liked about him. He was really good at explaining. Like, his goal was to take me off medication, but he did a good job of, like, at least for me anyway, he did a good job of, like, showing me, like, shock and awe type stuff. You know what I mean?
Right.
Here's what your fucking system looks like. Here's what my medical system looks like for you. Like, it's it's like, it's bad. You know what I mean? And but so he could show me because it's controlled medication, so they have to be able to know that stuff, or else you'd just be able to jump doctor to doctor like people used to do and just pill search. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I wasn't trying to do that. Mainly it just came down to who fucking has an appointment slot the soonest, because that's where I'm going to go to get my medication refilled. So sometimes it was a civilian doctor and sometimes it was the VA, depending on when I could get in. And I think that's kind of what messed everything up, because I was trying to take better control of my healthcare, you know, and I had more than one option. So I needed to stop just using one option and dealing with it.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's probably my fault in a way, but it wasn't until I got to that pain management doctor where he's like, they can see everything. There's a whole system right here of all your controlled medication. Everything the VA gives you is right here. Everything this other doctor is giving you is right here. But he could tell when he was looking at everything, he's like, none of these guys are even giving a shit if you can take these pills together. You know, some of the stuff that they're prescribing when someone else is prescribing, or, you know, not even that, but just they're not seeing everything. So this doctor that's just treating my pain might not realize the whole other laundry list of anxiety, depression, you know, PTSD type medications that I'm on. So it just got to the point where I don't remember if I talked about it on another show. Like, I put myself in the emergency room twice by simply just forgetting to take pills. And I think that's actually when you mentioned that I was addicted, and I don't think that I had ever considered that before. And nobody at the emergency room ever said anything or said it in those words. I guess it was pretty obvious going back, because obviously as soon as I took my pill, I was better. And it usually came down to I either ran out and couldn't get it refilled in time, just due to me not calling it in sooner. Like, I can't blame anybody for that. The VA was never bad about getting my medication. I was always bad about not calling in a refill and giving them enough time to do it, you know. But I ended up putting myself in the emergency room multiple times, basically withdrawing, you know, and
Your body becomes physically addicted to it.
yeah.
Cocaine is the only mentally addictive drug. Everything else is pretty much physically addictive.
Yeah.
For the most part, the major players, heroin, opioids.
Yeah, and so this part, going back to, we got off.
What that kid went through in the documentary trying to withdraw was horrendous.
Oh yeah, we're gonna get to Jaden in a couple minutes for sure. That was hard to watch for me.
It really was.
Being a father, and I don't think you have to just be a father or a mother to feel for that kid, but
just be compassionate.
That was hard to watch.
It really was.
I will say that if you
it ends happily.
If you aren't into watching kids have to struggle, then maybe you don't want to watch that scene and go through it. I will say that, because it did suck. It was a pretty shitty scene that we're going to get into in a minute. But yeah, I think withCio Rodriguez, who we've been talking about, all the pills she was on, I think that was one of the hardest hits for me, because I've always considered a small percentage of our overall population being medicated that way, talking about veterans and, you know, some other people that fit in a similar healthcare category to that, you know, but I never considered everybody was walking around like that. You know what I mean? I don't know why. I don't
Growing
know.
up, doctors, family doctors, or when I was a kid, right? So Generation X. When we were younger, way before pill mills or pain medication facilities were open, doctors didn't care. I had knee surgery. My doctor gave me 100 Percocet at a time with unlimited refills.
Mm-hmm.
Could you imagine, until you feel better, just stop ordering them? Like, that's like, here's a gun, just keep shooting.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like, that's insane. And my body felt it. I had to withdraw off of it, you know? But it's just insane how they do that.
Mm-hmm. That's one good thing. Like, when I came off, like, it was done medically. Like, me tapering off was done under the supervision of a doctor, especially with the amount that I was on. Because when I went back and tried to research it the best I can, I'm pretty sure I was taking somewhere between 175 to 190 milligrams a day. of some form of hydrocodone or oxycodone, both quick and slow release. Like I had one that was a slow release, 45 milligram. So that was like one of the bigger ones. And that was
So right now, solely on cannabis?
I'm on nothing at all. I'm on absolutely nothing except
just cannabis.
CBD and CBD and THC, different forms of it.
Hallelujah.
Man, I was on literally every pill they mentioned in this documentary I was on, except for that one ADHD medication.
And just so, Jeff, just real quick before we get back onto the other subject, just so other veterans who have been through what you've been through and are totally relating with you right now and the multiple drugs and all that stuff, how do you feel? How did you feel then on all those drugs? Like just your daily demeanor, and as opposed to now?
I'm gonna be honest, for a couple years, most of this was when I was still in Texas, because when I got to Florida, is when shortly after, that's when I started coming off, and then my brother moved in around the same time and kind of got me going with cannabis. But it's hard to say because, like I said, I don't remember a lot of it. Like, I'll look around the house sometimes at pictures on the wall and try to remember my kid at that age. Like, my oldest son is only 6, and I look at pictures of him when he's like 2 or 3, and I have a hard time remembering it. And that was only a couple years ago. I don't really remember much, honestly, shortly after I got out of the military, because that's when I was on a lot by then. Like, I was on a lot in the military. Definitely more than I feel like is safe for someone to just, be walking around and, like, I was fine.
Multiple firearms?
Well, I didn't, let's see. I'm trying to think. I don't think I was on any pain medication on any of my deployments or anything like that I can recall. But the hard part is I've always hated medication. I was one of those kids, you can ask my parents, I was one of those kids where my pill was getting crushed up and put in an applesauce because I'm just not taking it. I've never been good at swallowing pills to this day, and I've had to eat hundreds of pills in my life. Well, a lot more than hundreds of pills, but you know, I don't know how to swallow properly. Like, you know how someone can just put it on their tongue and then toss it back? I can't do it. The only way I've ever been able to swallow pills my whole life is to drop them literally like this, and then drop the pill into the back of my throat. So the only place it can go as soon as I start drinking water is down my throat, because I'll tongue it off to the side, and then it goes to the side of my mouth, and then
Like
it
a
starts
dog?
and then it starts. Yeah, I'm literally exactly like when you're trying to fight with a dog to take its medication. And I don't even mean to. I swear to God, like, I'm not doing it. My tongue's doing it. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not controlling this. And
I literally take in the morning about 9 supplements at once.
see, I could never even do the supplements. There were so many times.
I take them all at once and I put them in my mouth, and I just take a full cup of water and I go bloop, and I drink the whole one gulp.
It makes no sense because I could have a mouthful of peas, and you know what I mean, and I could swallow them all down. But if it's pills, not one. I could have a mouthful, take a sip of water, that water is going down, and all the pills are just going to the side, and I'm gonna squirrel it off in my cheek or something like that. I don't know, man.
funny.
Anyway, so like even supplements, like remember Animal Stacks and stuff like that?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
the Animal Stack had like 11 or 13 pills or something like that.
Yeah.
Dude, I'd be in Afghanistan just one at a time, dropping those things into my throat and swallowing them before I got to the gym. So by the time I even got to the gym, I'm like already burned out from just the episode of having to take my pills to get there. You know what I mean?
And that last one was always the desiccated liver pill, which tasted horrible.
I took it first. That was the first one that I would take. And it was
That one
like,
always tasted horrible.
and it was huge. It was like twice the size of everything else in there. But anyway, but yeah, so going back, like all that medication I was ever on, I just couldn't swallow it to begin with. Anyway, I've been like that my whole life, so that didn't help needing medication, because it was only recently after I got out of the military, I would say that's when, my dose at least doubled. Probably more, but at least doubled almost immediately. I went to the doctor, and now it was a VA thing and not an active duty thing anymore. And they're like, here's all the medication you could want, and I never felt like I was doing something wrong because I never abused it. Not once. Every once in a while, you might catch me taking another pill at hour 3 instead of at hour 4 when I'm supposed to do it. But I tried to be as good as I could, because at least the one thing that was helping me is I had a stigma of the medication the whole time I was taking it.
Was it doing anything? Was it doing anything to you physically, you think?
Oh yeah.
Do you
Yeah. I was in way worse pain being on all the medication. I think it's briefly covered in the documentary, but honestly, other than me mentioning it a few times, I talked about it in the paper a little bit too and did some research, medical research on it. But when I brought up, I think the first episode, from the same doctor, the opioid-induced hyperalgesia, where basically, and they touch on it, they don't call it that, but they touch on it in the documentary, where the pain medication you're on is actually making your receptors for pain weaker, so you're growing less tolerant of pain. So the more medication you're on, the more pain you're going to feel.
Exactly.
And then the opioid-induced hyperalgesia is similar, but it actually similar in a way. Well, I don't know how to necessarily compare them to your phantom pains, but that's what they are. They're phantom pains. For 2 years, I had what was a knife in my back. It was the only way to describe the pain. There's no other way. It wasn't a hurt muscle or a torn muscle or a slipped disc. There was a knife in my back, straight up.
The best way I can describe phantom pains is, as an amputee, we all feel like our limb is still there. It just feels like it's asleep. It always feels like it's still there asleep. So that feeling you get when your leg falls asleep, or your arm.
Pins and needles or whatever.
Yes. So just magnify that by 1,000. And that's what it feels. It feels like a million tiny daggers, but sometimes it reaches a level where it feels like an electrocution as well. But you're physically fine. There is no physical pain. It is all neurological and nerves.
And that's most of the problem that you're dealing with once you get on all these opioids is a lot of nerve issues. And then to have a lot of nerve damage, because I have a lot of nerve damage on top of that. So then they had me on like gabapentin and things like that, which that's like one of the worst.
Same here too. I hate it.
And you were probably on a couple thousand milligrams a day, I would imagine. I think they had me on like 2,700 milligrams a day on top of everything else.
I lasted a week on it. It made my stomach crappy. I told them I don't want it.
Yeah.
They said, "What are you gonna do?" I said, "I'll be good." And I smoked, and cannabis got me through all of it. It got me through all of it. Losing a limb, it helped me transition. It made it easier for me to be patient with learning how to walk again. It helped me in so many factors. But back to you just real quick. So today, it's night and day. You're solely on cannabis, and I mean physically, mentally.
I mean,
couldn't be better.
I'm not 100%. You know what I mean? I'm not gonna say every day is a good day.
Who is ever 100%? You know.
I mean, it's
you're just having more better days than bad days.
It's not a secret, because I publicly said it. But about a month ago now, I think it's been right around a month, I dropped Facebook and kind of got off social media for a little bit and tried to take a little break, and I was letting it affect me, and for no real reason, just I'm a stay-at-home dad. I get freaking bored during the day, and I'd get caught in a newsfeed scroll that I couldn't get out of or something.
The trigger propaganda.
And I just needed to take a little break. Everything was negative all over the place, and
it's bad.
I don't miss it, man. I honestly don't miss it, but shoot, I barely even remember where I was going with it.
I just bailed out myself. I just bailed out myself. I'm using it solely for business.
Yeah. And I'm going to be using it for the podcast and everything now. And I think really what I meant to do was take a break from my news feed, because I feel like I'm missing out on a lot of stuff in a couple groups that I'm in, especially cannabis related things. And I need to jump back on that, but, to go back to what you were saying originally, like it's a night and day difference. And, I had to cut some things out. Like I had to cut some of the negativity out. That's what I was saying, for recently. But so not every day is great. Some days are still bad, but I they're so much better than when I was on the medication. You know what I mean? Like at one point in the documentary, Jaden, who we're going to get into again here in a minute, his dad said he'll take one, or what was it, 16 good days and a couple bad days over 30 days and 30 bad days,
Yeah.
And so we're gonna everyone. What's that?
They said he had like maybe 4 or 5 bad days a month, as opposed to 30 out of 30.
Right, exactly. And it's kind of like that still, but that's everybody, and that was kind of one of the things with social media is that I was kind of saying is nobody posts a negative side of their life. Everybody just posts the positive things. Nobody really wants to talk about a bad day. They want to talk about a good day.
Of course.
And you can let that stuff bum you out if you're not paying attention. You're like, man, looks like everybody's having a blast while I'm sitting at home, and that's not really the case, because everybody else is sitting at home, and except for that one day that they went and did something and posted pictures of it or whatever, you know what I mean? But
I read somewhere that is a new type of syndrome where they're mentally getting depressed because of watching other people supposedly thrive in life, and they're at home, stay home moms, or they're whatever they may be doing, where they're not, they feel already that their life is maybe not as active as it should be, and they're watching these people on boats, and when in reality they're just jumping in front of shit and taking selfies that are, renting cars to take a bunch of videos, and you know what I mean? Like it's all a facade anyway, but people watch it and they say it's creating a syndrome now with social media.
I believe that. It makes sense. There's probably a Black Mirror episode about it.
Right.
I wouldn't
I'm
be
sure.
surprised. So after that section there, where we kind of first get our dose of all the medication that people are going to be on, jumping way back into the documentary.
Yeah.
She said that anytime she tried to go to a doctor and kind of approach the issues she was having with all the medication she's on, and it's not doing anything, the doctors would just give her more, she said. They never tried to lower her doses or get her off certain things. They either just switched it or gave her more. And that was kind of what I was saying too. Like everywhere I went, they would just give me medication. You know what I mean? And it's like, if I'm not abusing it because I'm doing it the way the doctors are saying, then I'm not really doing anything wrong necessarily. But in my mind, I definitely still had that stigma. I felt like shit every time I was taking a pill, because I knew, like, I'd much rather be able to live my life without this pill. You know what I mean? I've just never enjoyed being on pills ever in my life, so to have to rely on them now, it sucked real bad.
I'll tell you one of the things that stood out for me in the documentary that I didn't know, it was actually an educational part for me, was I did not know that through the 70s and 80s they were breeding out the CBD to make it just fully THC heavy and stronger, and people were losing the healing properties of the plant because of that.
And we didn't know, you know what I mean? Like, no one knew. And that makes
Nobody
sense.
was doing the CBD studies at the time.
It makes sense too why everything would be so THC high and so THC heavy, because back then, with it being as recreational as it was to get high. You know what I mean? Like, we didn't have any medical studies. I was too young, honestly, to have even cared back then. You know what I mean? But it was too soon for us to know that it was doing anything other than making us feel good. And I think the high probably got in the way. You get so focused on the high that you don't get focused on, like, holy shit, like my knee hasn't hurt in like 3 weeks. You know what I mean? And
A lot of the research was like really rogue in the 80s, and really like, a lot of like out of Amsterdam and areas like that, where they were doing kind of rogue testing on stuff. So like, they were the first ones where they started to do more strains and things like, break it up. And then of course Humboldt and areas like that started to do that. But really, like I was telling you before in the other episode, like, we just bought a bag of pot. You know what I
yeah,
mean? Like,
exactly.
nobody went, hey man, you want some indica? You want some sativa? You want some,
Yep.
like, I got 25 strains. It was just like, hey, what is it? Oh, it's Panama Red.
It still kind of blows my mind when I go to the dispensary and all that is available and all the new stuff that they're making, to the point where
So much fun.
you can't even keep up with it anymore. And I don't know if you saw this or not, but at least for us in Florida and other places that have like have True Leaf. True Leaf is one of the only places I've seen it so far, but Curaleaf might have had it too. But they're starting to list their terpene profiles along
Yes.
with the strain, and that's new. That's new, and I'm glad that we're starting to see that, because the
And
more,
brilliant.
yeah, exactly, the more that we do the research and everything, the more the indica, hybrid, sativa, that's kind of a flawed system now. Um, it doesn't hold as true as it used to, especially with all the new strains that are out now and the mix of the terpene structures, compared to, what they would have been a hybrid from before versus what they've been crossed with now, completely changes the terpene profile. Now that strain could potentially behave in a completely different way.
You don't need high THC levels, because the combinations between the terpenes and the certain CBDs and the everything in the plant there is working in such a different way.
Uh, yeah, it was pretty cool to see the story of them having to breathe CBD back into the plant again. Once they started to learn more about the properties of CBD, we saw it. Steve D'Angelo was talking about it when they were getting their lab, or when they were getting their product tested. There wasn't even a lab that would test it, so they had to stand up their own lab basically to be able to run their own tests. And that's where they found a couple strains CBD dominant versus THC dominant.
Pioneers.
Yeah, exactly. And, approached these growers like, hey, your CBD dominant stuff, we want you to grow more of it. And then he in a way kind of had to promise the growers, like, I'll get it sold. Like, don't think you're going to grow it and it's going to go to waste. I'll take care of, I'll take care of that end of it. And so Steve and Andrew, his brother, kind of got the ball rolling on that. So thanks,
Like they've done so
thanks
many
for that.
times.
Yeah, exactly. They've always been right near the forefront. It's hard to not have Steve or Andrew come up in a discussion with a lot of things, especially coming out of California.
Absolutely.
And then one thing that I did find crazy as far as the numbers go, there was the 161 patients that were treated by Dr. Moskowitz. And so of those 161 patients, he gave some statistics, and a couple of them were pretty overwhelming. Like, overwhelmingly, why aren't we doing something about this? Like,
And coming from the medical field.
right.
So in medical statistics, like 81, 70%, like those kind of percentages.
Giant.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, a miracle drug.
Yeah.
If its percentage is that high.
It's a phenom.
A couple of the percentages of the 161, so all the percentages is off that. 87% reported a reduction in pain, that's just absurd to me. And for me, for sure. Now me,
even Viagra is an 87% reliable.
Yeah. For me, now see, this is one of those good examples actually of they don't specifically say THC versus CBD, and I think that is sort of important only because it says they were treated with cannabis, but it doesn't say what. And if 87% reported a reduction in pain, it makes me wonder the THC versus CBD ratio potentially in there. Because at least with me, what I have found is THC doesn't do much for my pain, and that I have to supplement with CBD.
Right.
For
Well,
pain.
I do too. I use both as well.
Going back to the forgetting to take medication, sometimes I still forget to take CBD. I don't know. I'm very bad at adding things to a routine once I have a routine, even if it's a shit routine. I'm bad at adding new things to it. So even if it's as simple as at 8 o'clock in the morning, I want to take some CBD oil under my tongue to kind of get my morning going or whatever, I'll forget the next day. You know what I mean?
Cannabis has always helped me with pain. It's always been excellent for me with pain. Adding CBD to my daily regimen has just magnified it. So it's made it my joints that much better. My lower back, being an amputee, like I said before, you have aches and pains everywhere. I'm 53. Even if I had my leg, I'd have aches and pains, right?
Right. Yeah.
And cannabis alone has been able to help me with that easily. But to add the CBD now and put that in my regimen daily has just magnified it. It's definitely changed my way of life.
Yeah, I'll remember if I haven't taken CBD in a day or two, because I'll start feeling it in my knee first before anything else. I'll have basically it's like a pain I forgot about come back. You know what I mean? Because I'll have it treated for a while, and then I'll go 2 days and forget the CBD or something. Like if I miss it, something happens and I miss that 8 o'clock mark, or I miss whatever it happens to be in my routine, it's over. It's gone. It's not going to come back unless I force it to come back again. I'll forget CBD until I feel it. But luckily, I've been doing this now, and I've been doing it in the mindset of searching for the wellness of it. You know what I mean?
So I got to tell you a story. A guy I work with, I have a lot of guys I have at work that are clients, customers of our CBD business, and it's blowing up. All these guys are older, they're military, and they really are feeling it and understanding it. They've done their homework, their research, and they're ready to jump in, and they trust us. Funny thing is, one of the guys wears one of the Garmin watches. The Special Forces guys all wear those does it all watch, altimeters, all that good stuff. And he said he came in the other day to buy some more CBD from me. And he said, I just want to know, I have quantified proof now that CBD works in my body. And I said, how? He said, my watch has a stress meter. And when I don't take CBD for a whole day, my stress levels rise.
I'm gonna put mine on and see what my heart rate is right now. I literally have one right here.
Yeah. And he said he goes, that's quantifiable to me. And I agree. It is. I think that's a great testimony to the CBD.
I'm at right about 70. Yeah, I have a Garmin one also.
I love those watches.
Yeah, they're not over the top flashy. Mine doesn't even have a color screen, actually. It looks like
I have a Sunto.
It looks like the old Casio style watches.
Yeah.
But I really like mine. It's got a GPS built in with the Garmin. Like that was one of the good selling points for me. Like this thing, it'll do. There's a couple different GPS tracker systems it does, but one thing it does is a breadcrumb trail. So what you can actually do is set your GPS when you begin your hike, and it'll put these dots on this map every once in a while, and you can basically follow the whole thing back.
Nice.
It'll basically plot your GPS route back, because it's not like Google Maps or Apple Maps where it's got everything all built in, you know what I mean? Like it's a little bit more rudimentary than that, old school map stuff. But I thought the breadcrumb trail was neat because like worst case scenario, you set one of those up and you always have a way back, even if it's as old school as it gets, dropping pebbles. But
Yeah.
it was kind of neat. It was kind of neat. It was a nice watch, and I didn't want a giant screen or something on one of them that I was gonna break. Like I looked at the Samsung ones and everything like that. And it was just I didn't trust myself with it. I have a lot of watches and I have a lot of nice watches, but I'm not like careful with my watches a lot of the time. So I needed something that could hold up.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I liked the heart rate monitor, and that was one of the big things for me at the time. I was actually about a year ago, probably now, I was on blood pressure medication for a short amount of time. And so one of the things I was doing with that, I just like to have it to kind of watch my heart rate and just kind of see where my heart rate was sitting. Because I was having episodes where my heart was starting to beat real fast, and then I was like passing out basically. Last year, I think I remember telling you about it, but I like was up on a ladder and passed out, fell off the ladder and fell on the ground and messed my ankle up pretty bad. I didn't break it, but it was sprained it real bad. And sometimes spraining your ankle actually hurts worse than breaking it.
It lingers forever.
Like you wish you would have broke it because the pain would have been over by now. Yeah, it sucked, and I don't know. It was, I didn't know if breathing or heart came first, but all of a sudden I couldn't breathe and my heart felt like it was going to explode out of my chest. And then that happened a few other times, but mostly in the heat. Just gets so damn hot here. You know what I mean? I go out and I try to do work outside and I almost die from it. It's a good excuse to not do yard work if it's not going to let me live.
Not in the summer, at least, right?
But we should.
So those statistics you're reading, you got to get back into those because they're mind blowing, and we just kind of got
So 87% reported reduction in pain, which we went over. I'm gonna guess CBD was in play, but that's just my unprofessional opinion. 81.5% improvement in sleep. Another absolutely giant statistic. I can't even imagine sleeping pills having 81.5% improvement in sleep. And then what do we have next? 73% improved handling of stress.
Excellent.
Definitely. 76% improved quality of life. 100% for me. 100.
Yeah.
For sure 100%. And that 76% improved quality of life, it does not say, but I would guess for some people that had the ability to come off of certain medications because of the cannabis, if that test ran that long, that either contributed to the 76%, or if the test ran long enough that they could actually still be evaluated when they came off of prescription meds to replace or have cannabis replace. Not saying it can replace everything, but it will definitely replace some things. I wonder if that percentage might have actually gone up more than 76%. Because is that a snapshot of 76% of people that are on cannabis but also on all their other meds currently? Or is that a snapshot of some people that have been able to come off of some stuff?
No, of that 161
No, I know, but I just don't know the time frame.
Oh, yeah,
to know if it was long enough that some people got to come off with some things. Because I just feel like that percentage is already high enough that it could have included that, but it could have maybe been higher if that was also an included factor.
Well, I think one of the most important statistics, never mind the staggering numbers that you read before, but I think one of the most important ones in that list is 77% lowered opioid use. That's 124 members out of the 161.
That basically answers my question. I forgot about that statistic, and it was like 2 down from what I was reading.
I mean, that's epic.
Yeah.
77, more than 3/4 of the people lowered their opioid use. 124 of the 161 people because of cannabis.
Yeah, now that makes me want to go back to what I was saying before and wonder if that 76% is a snapshot at the same time of the 77% that lowered their opioid use. like what I was talking about, if we knew people came off or not. And then that one obviously says 77% lowered their opioid use. So now it still makes me wonder about the 76%. That's all. Just because that's already a super high number for an improved quality of life. And it would just be cool to see if it could go higher than that. 53% improved energy. That's going to be kind of strain specific, probably. If you're taking a heavy knock you out like Skywalker OG or Northern Hash Plan or
9-pound
hammer, crescendo, a couple things like that. I can't imagine you're going to have improved energy, but I also imagine they were probably all in the same thing. It'd be silly.
There are also people who can sleep on cocaine.
That's probably true. 43% improved focus. And then on that 77% that lowered the opioid use, 11% stopped completely. Which is big, because in that same conversation, the doctor that did that pill did the test on the cannabis versus his pills. There was one guy that was talking about how he used to be on 100 something, 150 something around there maybe, and then he said he's still prescribed 90 milligrams currently, but he doesn't even take it. Like, he just doesn't really need it. You know what I mean? So I would imagine that 11 or that 77% that lowered would probably go up a little bit more too, because they could probably come off more or lower. But again, I'm not saying this can just replace everything. Some people are gonna have some things that need to be dealt with other ways, and that's what it is. There's still going to be prescription medication. I'll never say we have to get rid of pills, but we definitely need them regulated better, and there needs to be a stigma kept.
Sure.
It's glorified these days to take medication to feel better, and that's not a good thing. You should be feeling better to feel better. Not
preventative medication.
Yeah, not taking. That same guy that was talking about the 90 milligrams or so that he was still prescribed, he said basically he all of a sudden realized that he hadn't been taking his medication because he felt good, and then that's when he knew things were really working, because the medication that he used to have to live by, I know a lot of us that were on that type of medication probably lived every 4 hours on their watch. When can I take my next pill? Or if you staggered stuff, it's every 2 or whatever, every 2 hours or so. People live by their watches, so to all of a sudden have that day, that freedom to, I never took my medication with me anywhere we went usually, because of the stigma thing. I felt, I might as well go do coke in the bathroom. That's just how I felt. You know what I mean? Like, being out in public and taking a pill, I felt like a piece of shit doing it. So I always had that stigma. But so the problem with that is I never really wanted to be anywhere unless it's like, all right, I took my pill, let's go there and get it over with, so I can be home in 4 hours, because I'm gonna be in a lot of pain and I'm gonna have to take a pill again. And for me, it wasn't as so much like, let me get home because I got to take my pill. It was, let me get home because I'm in a lot of fucking pain and I need to take a pill. You know what I mean? Like, there was that caveat. I was in a shitload of pain. I wasn't just wanting another pill. I was probably in pain 45 minutes after the medicine kicked in anyway. I was probably still in pain for 2.5, 3 hours of that 4 hours that I was on medication anyway. But that was kind of where I was at in my head, was like, hopefully this will work today and I'll feel better or whatever, but, and then we get into needing less pills, on cannabis. And then we get into, where we want to talk now, in Jaden's journey. Jaden David, he suffered from a rare form of epilepsy called Dravet syndrome. And basically he would have seizures every day, almost a good majority of the day. His father, Jason, said that he'd have thousands of twitches a day, grand malls a couple hours a day, and he was on all kinds of different medications. I listed a couple here in a few minutes. But basically, he was on all this medication. Nothing was really helping. It looked awful. I couldn't imagine just all day having to deal with your child going through these seizures the way he was.
Could not live a normal childhood.
Well, he said at one point he put Jaden in a high chair and called his mom to come get him because he was just gonna leave. He couldn't take it anymore, and he was gonna go kill himself. And his mom talked him out of it, but
I remember that.
But I imagine that's probably a pretty common circumstances in a lot of households with, children with medical conditions like what Jaden has.
Can break you.
So basically, he saw someone on TV. I'm gonna guess it was some kind of interview. He wasn't specific, but he saw someone on TV talking about how they use cannabis to treat Tourette's. And he was like, well, Tourette's is a neurological issue and epilepsy is a neurological issue. Maybe there's something similar. And so he started basically Googling around knowing this information now and came across CBD and cannabis and found cannabis oil. And eventually it led him to Harborside with Steve and Andrew, and they began a little bit of a legal search to see if it's something that they could do because, they were a business, and I don't think they had treated a kid yet, right? That was the first child?
Yes.
That was the first child that they had ever treated. So they kind of had to make sure everything, not just for them, but for Jaden's father as well. Is he breaking the law by doing this as well? And after the very first day of dosing, he went 24 hours without a seizure from the very first day. And then it just kind of started to get a little bit better and better. And at the time of the documentary, it was 16 days. 16 days was their record at the time of no seizures, no twitches. When it used to be thousands of seizures or thousands of twitches a day anyway, to none for 16 days.
What does that say to you? You know what I mean? That's like, if that doesn't bring you to your knees, you know what I mean? As a legislature, as a politician that may be standing in the way of cannabis moving forward so everybody can have it and at a decent price and be able to grow their own. If you're standing in the way of all that, how can you watch something like that and not be humbled?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. I mean, it goes back to the very first quote. You're either ignorant or arrogant.
Bottom line.
All these people that want to talk against it, and well, that's not true because in 1989, in my DARE class, this is what they told us about cannabis. You know what I mean? You still have some people that was like, nah, when I was 7 years old, somebody else told me this. You know what I mean? And it's like, okay, but that was 30 something years ago, 35 years ago at least.
The only thing the DARE guy did, the DARE officer did, was tell us where to buy drugs.
Oh yeah, or how to mix things together to make drugs I wasn't even aware of until the DARE day.
Yeah.
Wait, we can huff paint? How come I didn't think of that? But it's true. You know what I mean? Like, oh, okay. So which CVS are we supposed to go behind? Which one has the guy at the selling crack? But yeah, it's crazy. But there's a lot of people, myself included, up until not that many years ago, that just I didn't know. I didn't know there was medical research because you can kind of see in the documentary. I looked at some of David's past work, and it doesn't look like he's ever done anything related in the field of CBD or THC or anything before. And the director I'm talking about, so, and producer, I believe also. It's his movie. He's the one that made it and everything. When he learned about the endocannabinoid system and that our bodies are actually wired and have receptors and respond to CBD and respond to THC and respond to these hundreds actually of chemical components. Requires it. We create our own cannabinoids in the body. When he found that out, I think that's when he's like, I got to tell everybody, and decided and made a movie. And I could be wrong, but you can hear it in the tone, unless he's not the one doing the narrating. But either way, the narrator hit the tone on the head, where he was. You can just hear him say like, I didn't know this, and now you get to know about it too, and then it goes into the whole thing about the endocannabinoid system and how we're wired for it, and the receptors, and it controls the body's ability to eat, sleep, rest, digest, relax. I forget what they called it. There's a nickname that they called it, but basically it was
homeostasis.
Well, the homeostasis, but one of the doctors in that little section there called it something specific, but it was like the endocannabinoid system was like the main system almost. I forget what the term was that she used it, but it's over all of the other systems because it controls all of the other systems. And I'm going to be honest, if you would have told me that 5 years ago even, I would have told you you're full of shit.
Yeah.
And that's just something you're pushing on me to try to turn me. You know what I mean? Or convince me or justify the high. But we're not even talking about THC. We're talking about CBD.
Absolutely.
We're talking about a compound found in cannabis that was bred out of cannabis due to the fact that it doesn't get you high. And then it was bred back in due to the medical properties. So we're not even speaking about getting high anymore. And we're speaking about how to go about medicating yourself a different way without even the psychoactive effects. If you went strictly just a CBD regimen, I mean, they
all depend on your ailments, your issues that you have to treat. There is a variations to how you can treat that ailment through cannabis and the various, bioavailabilities, or if you're not looking for any THC, or you might be allergic to CBD. I mean, it's so many options to just stay in the cannabis realm.
But it's just come so far now, like with CBD too, as it comes more into the forefront, and we're finally getting more of that medical research out of there. Because even a couple of years ago, probably just a year or two before you really started getting into it, nobody knew shit about CBD. Hey, here's CBD. Go buy it at the gas station. That was it. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like
it's like some magic healing oil.
So I didn't buy it. I'm gonna be honest. When CBD first came out, I thought it was some bullshit. I thought kratom was some bullshit. All the stuff that you could get at tobacco shops and frickin' on Facebook and everything like that. Like it was some snake oil stuff to me, and that's because of the way it was introduced to me. Don't come at me with some new product on the market that's supposed to be like cannabis, but then not provide any research. Because I'm just gonna be like, yeah, whatever. I'm not gonna go home and do the research on it.
But the crazy thing is, it was there. Like, there was research then.
I know. That's what pisses me off.
It took a little more digging because it wasn't on the forefront. You had to do, there was a lot of Israeli research. There was a lot of rogue research, but it was out there.
It annoys me that there's actually been a decent amount of research out since the 1980s.
Yep.
But they've just decided to not let anyone know about it. They talked about a couple of disregarded reports. Steve D'Angelo mentioned a couple in there. One of them from 1976, the National Institute on Drug Abuse.
Three times, I believe they
Yeah,
came.
there are a couple of reports. One of them, that one, the 1976 report, was a 250-page report. I'm guessing not cover to cover about
They could
cannabis
not
specifically,
find
but
one bad thing about cannabis.
yeah, it was basically a lot of the health benefits and things like that. Even back in the 1970s, when we knew a fraction of what we know now, disregarded. The DEA judge himself even said that there's nothing in cannabis that's harmful and blah blah blah. Disregarded. The fucking DEA judge, their criminal law judge, I think they called it. They had a specific name for whoever that judge was, but
You'll see it in the documentary.
yeah, I mean, I didn't want to say everything necessarily word for word, because then why would you go watch it? Because it's really worth watching, and then I don't want you to go watch it and be like, oh, they told us this, they told us this, they told us this, and then it kind of ruins the surprise, I guess, because there is a little bit of shock and awe, in a sense, in the documentary that's important for you to see yourself. I think the way it's presented, they did a very good job with how they presented the facts, like we said before, but they did a very good job of finding the right people to talk to also.
They really did.
I enjoyed every single person that was interviewed in the documentary. I know we're coming up on an hour already, so I don't want to go crazy, but I wanted to talk about Riley's Law and Riley Maidler, who was another child, 7, I believe, right? 7 at the time.
Yes.
When basically she had a giant cell granuloma tumor, so she had a bone tumor in her face. And in the documentary, they show some MRIs of what her face looked like when they found this out, and it was awful.
It looked like her skull was melting.
Yeah, I didn't even understand.
From the inside out. It was horrible.
Now maybe you were the same way, but when I looked at the MRI, like when it went up on the screen before they described what you were looking at, sort of, so you had a split second to kind of make your own evaluation for a second. I didn't even know what the hell I was looking at.
Yeah, I mean, it didn't look like a tumor to me. Like I said, the only way I could describe it was it looked like the inside of her skull was melting.
Yeah, I mean, I think her mom said it looked like she got shot in the face.
Yeah, with a shotgun.
With a
at
shotgun.
point blank range.
Yeah, and she's not wrong.
No.
Wow, it was bad, man. It was
But
a bummer,
the
because you look at it for
turnaround-
a second, you're like, "What's that?" And then they tell you, you're like, "Oh shit," giant bone tumor that's spreading and getting worse.
Yeah.
Again, with her, I put this in the notes a couple times because I found it to be a trend and I found it to be important, that she found cannabis information online while searching about various ways to shrink tumors, because Riley ended up having a surgery to have most of the tumor removed, but they didn't get all of it, and they said that if there's any left behind, the chances are basically 100% that it's going to come back anyway. So she started doing research on other ways to shrink it, and came across cannabis and cannabis oil and tincture that they had at the time. And I thought that was important because all 3 people that had great results, so the 3 I'm talking about here was Cio Rodriguez, who was on all the medications before, and then Jaden's father. He actually saw it on TV, but then had to go do his own research and found CBD that way. And then Riley's mother started doing the research online, found out about CBD and THC and cannabis and oils and everything that way. So they decided to give her the cannabis oil, and it was not legal. And this was in Delaware. And that's a bummer, because the stigma already sucks already as it is. And I can only imagine what it must have been like for her.
Old colonial states.
I mean, obviously, from what you'll see in the documentary, they were very, very receptive on changing some things for her, which was pretty great. To kind
I think
of
once
see
you introduce children, it changes the game. everybody can relate with a child.
The government seemed to move a little bit faster at that point for sure. Not to get into politics because me and Mike made a little pact. We're not going to do politics here unless it's cannabis related, but there's enough politics everywhere that we don't need to talk about it here. But I was keeping note of the different people they were talking into the documentary, if they were Democrat or Republican, because generally cannabis legalization, decriminalization, medicinal use, that's kind of more of a, at least for history, that's much more of a Democrat view than a Republican view, which still stands today. If there's a vote, there's a lot of times Republicans are, you can guarantee a no from a decent amount of Republicans because you already know their stance. And the research like this isn't going to change that stance for a lot of people. It doesn't matter to them. Thousands of testimonies, 500-page reports, whatever. Some people aren't going to change it, and it is what it is. And we're here to hopefully change the stigma to some of these people. And there's a whole lot of organizations out there, and we'd like to be able to do it ourselves sometimes too, and educate people that need some better education on it. I invite that to anybody that wants some better education. I'd gladly point you in the right direction if I can't do it myself. And the Senator Ernie Lopez was his name, and this was in 2015, drafted Riley's Law, which allowed children access to physician-prescribed medicinal cannabis. And he was a Republican. And I didn't look up his everything about like his bio, like to see where he stood historically cannabis, if there was anything. But he did say that he changed his mind. It wasn't until they presented, basically they put everything down, and he's like, so you're saying that all of this happened because of the cannabis? And even doctors couldn't believe Riley's recovery based off cannabis oil and everything like that. And it finally, you had somebody that was willing to just sit down and look at the facts presented in front of them and make the determination that it's gonna, worst case scenario, it's gonna do less harm than good. But it's not gonna do the harm. I think one thing I liked is when they were in the office and they were talking to some of the people, and they were like, is she on the cannabis oil right now? And she's like, yeah, of course. And it's like, wow, she doesn't look like she is. Well, what does it look like? Because everyone
the woman who was asking her was 78 years old.
Exactly. Super deep
living
into
in the stigma still of what she was raised through in the 50s and the 40s, and
Yep. And you could see that the term cannabis or marijuana, usually you'll see that term, marijuana or weed or pot or whatever. Normally cannabis is more on the side of people that are for cannabis, and they don't use the word cannabis for people generally that are against it. I feel like the way, and we've been doing this on purpose, you'll see in the cannabis industry, is we've been trying hard to change the term to cannabis and get rid of the term marijuana because it was a made-up term to begin with.
And a derogatory term. Racist.
Derogatory term, yeah. And I mean, you can believe what you want on how it was started and whether or not racism played a factor and all that stuff. And I'm not here to debate all that kind of stuff, but go back and look up the history of the term marijuana, and you'll see that it actually has nothing to do in any way with cannabis other than be used as a derogatory term. Basically, at the time in the 30s, we weren't smoking. Marijuana wasn't really a thing in the States. It was still kind of more of an Eastern thing, and then it came over into Mexico, and then it kind of came up through Mexico. But in the time of the 20s and 30s, we weren't smoking cannabis here. We had it in medicine. It was in our pharmacology system. It was used in medications and used as tinctures and things like that. but that was looked at as a completely different thing than the dudes smoking pot and smoking marijuana and the doobies and all that, where all that stuff started to come from was the same thing that these people are taking by the spoonful when they have headaches and menstrual cramps and everything else that it was listed for in the pharmacology system back in the day.
We were feeding our livestock, our pigs, our poultry, CBD, basically. Feral CBD raw, and feeding it to the animals, where therefore we would be getting it through the meats, through the eggs, milks, and basically getting all of those healing properties directly through our livestock, and fully sustainable.
So it goes back to a stigma all the way back from the very beginning. We created that stigma. It's been hard to go away. You can definitely see it when we're out that a lot of the older crowd seems to be a lot more receptive. Generally speaking, the younger crowd, they're past all that. They're past the war on drugs for the most part. So like they're a lot more receptive. The young, I'm talking younger than me.
Yeah.
Even right about my age, I'm 37 now. Wow. Right about my age, I think, is where like started school in the end of the 80s, heavy into the 90s. This is your brain on drugs type stuff. Like, I feel like my generation was real heavy into the war on drugs, and I think it hit us pretty hard because of the age we were when it was really grinded into us, I feel like. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe everyone feels that way. But I feel like me being 7 years old in 1991 was probably a really ideal time to burn it into my brain how terrible cannabis was. Even compared to the 80s and 70s, I mean, because you had all the carryover still from Vietnam, and cannabis was still a huge thing in the 60s and 70s, and it almost got to the point there where it was so mainstream that people were leaving it alone almost for a minute, and then Reagan helped fix that.
My junior year in high school was 1984, and that's when crack hit. That's when crack hit the streets, and we thought it was the zombie apocalypse. Like they made it out to be that bad. And it was. And I mean, it was at that point just turning people into, monsters, and so at that time that stigma was going on at that point. So you know what I mean? It kind of overshadowed everything with cannabis during the 80s.
Yeah, and you could see it too, like the whole gateway drug. Like the only thing that they could really ever say with cannabis, or I mean, that wasn't even a term when I was growing up. No one said no one said cannabis, but marijuana was a gateway drug, and marijuana is going to make you do all these other drugs. And there's never really anything specifically about marijuana. Like, here's some reasons specifically not to do marijuana. It was always, well, don't do marijuana because then you'll do heroin. You know what I mean? And it was like the only way you can make cannabis look bad is by saying, I'm going to use it and then I'm going to use heroin. And heroin's bad. And we can both agree that heroin's bad. Got it. So now cannabis is just as bad as heroin because I might use heroin if I use cannabis. You know what I mean? And that's how they got you. They got you by, if you even try to use cannabis, you might as well be a heroin user. You know what I mean?
Kind of like your shirt.
Yeah, my prohibition poster from the 1930s.
Yeah.
So I mean, we
touch upon Dr. Sue before we finish.
Okay, so Dr. Sue, I love it. I didn't have much for notes here on Dr. Sue. So Dr. Sue, I've actually had the pleasure of speaking with her in the past. We had an awesome conversation on the phone before. Picked her brain a little bit about certain things. So what I really liked about, I hadn't heard this story before with the documentary here with Sue, what I really liked is how, unlike any other doctor ever, she listened to her patients, and based off listening to her patients, started to get more involved in understanding cannabis, to being one of the great researchers in our country on the
Dr.
matter.
Sue is Dr. Sue Sisley.
Yeah, Dr. Sue Sisley. And I really liked that. I already liked Sue. I already liked her, for other reasons, from speaking with her, knowing some of the things she's done, knowing how much she's helped veterans out. So she was already a name I was familiar with. So to see her on the documentary was awesome, because I didn't know she was on it. But
It added the last bit of validity to the documentary, didn't it?
it was great to know someone that was on it. Because yeah, if you had any doubts, and that would clear it up. You know what I mean? Well, for me, because I'm not saying that it would for everyone, but for me, that was like, hell yeah, like I legit know. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And but basically, she said that she had been seeing patients coming through, a lot of them talking about getting better based off of cannabis. Compared to all the stuff that she would normally be prescribing people in her practice. And so she started doing cannabis research and used that to learn more about it. And like I said, now she does a lot of research and everything. But I just found that was really important, because I feel like, especially with cannabis stuff, we're dismissed almost immediately. And it's sort of disheartening at times, because your doctor will be sitting there. He'll have his records in front of you. He'll see you currently, your current physical health, your current mental health, how you carry yourself, how you're feeling, your pain level, all that kind of good stuff. And then see that a year ago or 2 years ago, or whatever situation you're in, you used to be on all this medication, and now you're telling your doctor that you're on none, and the only thing you do is take cannabis. Not even smoke cannabis, just take cannabis, because there's 40 different ways that you can consume cannabis now, and half of them don't even get you high in any way, and you know what I mean? And they don't even care. He's going to let that patient leave his office, or she's going to let that patient leave their office cured. When I don't ever like to use the word cured, but obviously doing way better, and they're just going to dismiss that immediately and go and give oxycodone or hydrocodone or some type of pain medication to the next person that comes in their office, and they're never going to even think about that conversation they just had about someone that gets high all the time, because that's what's in their head. Oh, you just get high all the time, whatever.
Not until cannabis companies can kick them back. Just like Pfizer reps and all these other drug reps do. These doctors don't prescribe these drugs because they think they work. They prescribe them because they get paid to prescribe them. And they get kickbacks and vacations and cars and watches and all that good stuff.
Yep.
It's the only reason. They don't give a fuck about you or your health.
Pay
They
attention
give
to
a fuck
that
about the bottom line.
Pay attention to that the next time you have to go through a couple doctors' offices, and depending on where you're at, the posters on the wall with that medication or that medical device or whatever, the way they relate to what you're then prescribed by that doctor, it's not generally a coincidence. You know what I mean? They got posters all over their practice, and then they prescribe you that medication that's in the posters all over their practice. So they basically, the whole time you were in there, in a sense, if you look at it this way, if you want to start going down the road, like
The rabbit hole.
in a way, yeah. I mean, basically, they're desensitizing you to this medication from the moment you walk in, so that by the time the doctor prescribes it to you, you're not surprised that he's prescribing it to you. Because at least in the last 10 minutes of your life, that medication's everywhere, all over the place.
And if he's confident enough to advertise it boldly around his office, then he really must believe in it.
Yeah, exactly. Or why would you have the posters up? And that's just like any other form of advertising in a way. But to know that the medical professionals are doing that as well, because like you said, you know, and that's not a secret. You can look that kind of stuff up, you know what I mean? It's not hidden. The It's kind of like when we were in school when we were
My
kids and
mother
we
worked
used
for a
to,
doctor's office for 18 years.
it's like selling the candy bars when you were a kid for the fundraiser.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And you get
Yeah.
prizes if you go over a certain level or whatever.
Oh yeah, you had your whole family slanging chocolate,
Yeah.
right? You had everybody out.
I don't remember ever doing that. I do remember liking the ones with caramel in them though, but I didn't like any of the other ones.
I just remember my grandmother buying 90% of them from me.
I think that was every household. We had some fundraisers last year, and I'm pretty sure that to get to the level we needed to get to for our son to make it like worth it for him. He was kindergarten, so we pitched in some good money to make it fun for him, but I'm pretty sure most of that came from us to
Yeah.
get him to that level. Um, to kind of close things out, two more things. One kind of important to you, but they started touching on all the CBD businesses coming up and the different things happening with CBD now, which was refreshing to see. Um, Seeing it kind of more, you know, more throughout our day. Um, the example that I kind of kept was that brunch, the CBD brunch. And I just kind of really like the idea of that. I mean, nobody's stopping you at any point from taking some of your tincture and putting it in your food. You can do that at any point. Nobody's ever stopping you from doing that, and it will. You could. There's different oils that you can get. There's all kinds of ways to make edibles, and there's all kinds of ways to have already prepared oil and put it on already prepared food and make yourself an edible that way. And that requires no science and no talent really, but some of
They
these
also sell CBD in water soluble as well.
Yep, they got the powder. They got powder form even too.
Can make drinks with it. There is now water soluble CBD that comes in fruit punch flavor, lemon and lime. You just drop it in water like an energy drink. They're actually mixing it now with protein.
There'll be energy drinks at the gas station soon enough if they don't already have stuff like that. I mean, you can't go anywhere now without seeing a lot of products on the shelves, lotions, shampoos, conditioners, things like that. A lot of products.
All the big players are already strategically placed. Budweiser, Anheuser-Busch, Coca-Cola, all of them have subsidiaries or other companies that they own that are placed and ready to go in the cannabis business. They're just waiting for the MORE Act to fly through, and now that it looks like it's a Democrat stronghold, it should pick up speed and hopefully pass quicker this year and get the federal decriminalization done, get the expungements going, get all that good stuff going, and that's going to be a great start.
Yeah, I think it's important that the more we see it out, the more going back to desensitizing ourselves, kind of in a way, but the more we can desensitize ourselves. I don't remember why because I never go there, but went to Walmart and the products on the shelves and they had cannabis leaves, you know, the 7-point leaf on the product, like prominently displayed. And I was like, hey, good for you. You know what I mean? Like that you're not trying to hide what your product comes from. You know what I mean? And most of the bottle was a cannabis leaf. You know what I mean? So there's no not seeing it on the shelf. And I think we'll start seeing stuff like that more as the more and more the stigma kind of goes away, the desensitizing begins, and the understanding of the differences in cannabis. Cannabis doesn't just mean one thing. Cannabis can now mean hundreds of things because cannabis can be a whole spectrum of strains. Cannabis can be a whole spectrum of oils, of the flower, of all different types of concentrates with or without psychoactive effects. In other words, some stuff will get you high and some stuff won't get you high. And CBD dominant things won't get you high and carry most, if not all, of the same effects that many THC strains carry as well.
And you know, we're on the cusp right now where we can be fully sustainable with cannabis, growing our own, having portable processing machines to make our own oils. Where we can eventually be at a level where they're making the machines and the portability of the machines and things that you need, where we can do everything at home, make our own medicine from seed to oil. um, and that's really what it's all about, is when we can sustainably do it on our own and grow our own medicine all the way to the point where it's entering our system.
It's important. It's definitely, that's not going to be for everybody. We've already done an episode on growing. Um, but that's for a lot of people, like that's going to save some lives. Colin Wells, I believe, the veteran. We need to get to Colin Wells actually. At one point, he holds up, like he's sitting next to one of his plants because he grows, and he holds up a leaf. He said, "This plant's going to save a lot of people." And he, in the documentary, every week he makes his own CBD and THC oils and gives them out to veterans free of charge that needs them. And that's what it's all about, being able to not only self-sustain, because he's a user as well. I mean, that's his medicine as well. So he's keeping himself sustained, obviously. But then to be able to be bountiful and plentiful enough to help others, especially free, because as you know, CBD oil is not very inexpensive at the moment. It's still
Yeah.
it's still up there as far as what you would consider inexpensive and expensive. Um, so to be able to get that, to have someone like him to make this medicine for these people and then just give it to them that need it, it's great to know that there's people out there. He himself is a veteran. He has an organization called Veterans Walk the Talk, where it's a cannabis friendly, and they just go out on hikes and have a battle buddy for the day. And in the documentary, he had a group of what looked to be around 10 people or something like that. So it's not really a one-on-one thing, but a nice group thing, which is wonderful. We need more of that for sure. But to be able to grow and to be able to provide for not only yourself but for others, it's revolutionary. It's something that we can't do at the moment with other medications, unless you want to get into how to grow some of that type of stuff, or have a opium den or something. But yeah, it's just it's gonna be world changing, honestly, if people had the option to just have some little box in their corner of their house somewhere where they can grow themselves a plant every few months. Because depending on how much they need, that one plant can provide the amount of time before a new one grows.
Well, and now they have these plug and play machines like Cedo and some of these other ones where it does everything for you. You just put the nutrients, you put the seeds, you let it do it. It grows for you, and
Sup-
and they
Super Closet, the company Super Closet and Super Tent, the Gorilla Tent Super Closet, it's the same thing. It's the last time I looked at one of their decent packaged Super Closets, it's like $2,400.
Yeah.
Which you could probably, similar to when Elton was on the show, like the type of setup he had was easily half that cost. So technically you could build it yourself for way less. But if I did like the one that I'm talking about, came in like a nice metal enclosure. You could have it in like your garage or something, and it would just look like a little tool shed in there. Nobody would ever know,
Right.
And that's enough to keep you going for months at a time in one of those rooms, one of those little 2 feet by 4 feet or 4 feet by 4 feet type spaces, like what he had on the show.
And you can share.
Not only that, he's providing it to other people as well. There's a lot of seed sharing and things like that, and some strains work for some people and not for others, and there's people every day crossing strains to try to find something new, and that's one of my favorite things about it, is everything is new. Every strain's new. Every strain I try, it's gonna behave a different way. And I've talked about the journey a few times, and that's what I'm going to highlight the most, because that's what I'm in the middle of doing myself, is how many strains can I do. And and try to keep note of and document or whatever. And sometimes I don't. Sometimes I don't get around to writing about them. I just know that I like them for different things, and that's just up here somewhere. But it's been fun. I'm definitely, I think I'm closing in towards 75 strains, something like that I've tried now.
Nice.
It's been fun so far, and it's been time consuming, and some stuff I don't like, some stuff I don't finish, and some stuff I've not continued with, but I'm still looking, I'm still hunting for something that there's been plenty of things that knock my socks off, but I got a feeling that I'm still gonna find something one day that just knocks my socks off again in a different way, I'm
There's
sure
a lot
that's
of boutique growers out there like Alien Labs and guys like those that are making some just amazing boutique strains. Like these guys are genetic freaks, and and that kind of stuff is it always, they're always one upping each other.
I enjoy just seeing what's out there, just trying to keep up with. Well, you can't keep up with it, but I try to keep up with it the best I can because it's crazy. It's there's so much out there by the time that I got involved that I can't find enough time in the day to get what I feel is caught up to where I feel like I should be knowledge wise, because I'm always figuring out something new, and I'm behind on a lot of things too that I still want to experiment for myself. There's some stuff that's not like cool anymore, where it's like been there, done that for a lot of people, but I've never been there, done that. So I'm still trying a lot of that. I'm still trying a lot of that stuff out. So there's some stuff where I might be behind the curve, or like people have known about that for a long time, but that's kind of why we're here in a way. For the people that don't, you know what I mean, play catch up a little bit. But to kind of close the documentary portion out for the night, like I just wanted to say thank you to everyone that was involved in that documentary, because everyone knew how important that was. To make something like that, I think Steve D'Angelo mentioned at one point that that was one of the better documentaries he's been a part of, just because of how deep he was able to dive into the subject and present you with the real, some real facts.
Should be the Bible. For moving forward, to set the groundwork for education and research for people to understand. It should be that go-to documentary that you want to pass on to people. It is that prolific.
So far, I'd agree with that, because I've seen quite a few documentaries, and I don't think one really hit me in the way that this one did, where it's like, both of us were kind of like, wow, we need to talk about it.
Yeah.
And it's been out since August, and I had seen it and I had read about it, and I just never got around to it for a while, to watching it. But yeah, it was important, just like I said, when he found out about something, and that was his turning point, where he's like, I got to go tell everybody, and made the movie. And, so I'd like to definitely thank David and everyone involved, especially, I forgot to say this quote earlier, and I really wanted to, Riley Maidler, when they were talking to her, and they were talking about her being able to help others now, because she's an activist, young activist now. And her quote was, I feel like I was lucky to have the tumor, or else I wouldn't be doing any of this. Which was crazy, that she was probably 10 to 12. Like there's no way she was older than that. To have the mindset that, she understands that what she went through paved the way to make sure that others don't have to go through that. And to have that grasp of reality at such a young age, the sky is probably going to be the limit for her.
It's funny that you brought up that quote, because it is probably one of the things I felt the most in that movie, because when I lost my leg and I didn't really, I didn't have, I guess I was fortunate because I wasn't a young kid. I was in my 40s. So I kind of picked the ball up and just ran with it. And as I kind of went and just did stuff and got more involved in the amputee community and giving back and helping and doing mentoring and things like that, I said to myself at some point, and I've told close people by me that I feel like I had to lose my leg, like it was meant to be, because like I think that someone upstairs felt that I was strong enough to be an advocate and to be somebody who would lift others up who fall into the same position. So I feel where she comes from, but I I'm 53, you know what I mean? Like it happened to me in my 40s. So for somebody that young to have that enlightenment, and it took me 53 years, 40 something years, whatever it may be, to reach some level of wisdom, to just realize and understand that and take it for that. But and think, you know what, okay, this is my burden to carry, this is my cross to carry, and I'm going to carry it as fashionable as I can.
Right. Exactly.
And for her to do that with such poise and grace at such a young age, and the damage she's already done, the positive damage, meaning with her law and all that stuff. I mean, the sky's the limit for where she's going from here.
Absolutely. It's just to that's something that someone her young shouldn't even be able to comprehend. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? To understand
Trauma and adversity does that to people.
to understand the good she is doing, I feel like she's too young. At least I would have assumed she would be too young to even understand the monumental role that she's gotten the ball going. But no, she understands it, and she knows that she's supposed to be here for that, and that was awesome for me. That was
I mean, bottom line, it's a great documentary. I hope we didn't spoil any of it for you, but we really wanted to touch upon how prolific it is and how you should at least give it a chance and watch it, so you understand where we're coming from, why we're such big advocates for this whole plant, this change of life. I mean, this is something that can just change every aspect of your life, and physically, mentally, spiritually. Um, so I think this is a great stepping stone for anybody wanting to learn, and we highly recommend it. I guess gets 2 thumbs up.
4 thumbs up,
4
technically.
thumbs up.
But yeah, it's like I said, I've seen quite a few.
You could
this
see it
is-
on Amazon Prime.
Yep, this is one that I really wanted to pass along, and this is also one that I found important because it was not veteran specific, which I try or usually tend to lean towards just because I feel like I can relate to it a little bit better. Where this one is a little bit of everybody. You kind of see all angles of it. You see it from we didn't even get into it. I mean, there's so much to cover, and I'm glad we didn't just kind of go chronologically on everything. We did jump around a little bit, but
We want to leave some meat on the bone.
yeah, I mean, there's cancer is in there, PTSD is in there, depression, anxiety, all these different symptoms. Graft versus host disease. We didn't even get into graft versus host disease because though I'm not going to say them, but those statistics are going to blow your mind too. In the graft versus host disease one, another one coming out of Israel, study coming out of Israel, like
Way
a lot
ahead
of
of
them
us.
did. A lot of them did. Again, thank you very much for tuning in. We hope you get an opportunity to watch it. I did already, I think ahead of time the other day, I posted a link up for it. I'll do that again in the description in the show here. I'll do that.
At least give the trailer a try. Watch the trailer first. If it's not you, that's fine. But watch it. It's going to grab you. It's going to
Well, the
make
trailer is going to be at the beginning, so
Yes.
they won't have a choice. We're going to be editing
Don't
the
forward
trailer
it.
at the beginning.
Watch it.
Don't go past the trailer because we're doing that on purpose. I want to get you sucked in at the beginning because it
Please.
got us. But thanks for everything. We're just trying to do what we can for everyone here and pass along stuff we've learned and hope others are able to learn too. We'd love if you could share this around. Make sure you subscribe to our systems, like, comment, all that good stuff. Help us out.
Give us your feedback.
Yeah, we would love to be able to, even if not live, since we're not doing live at the moment, but if we have an opportunity to just collect questions and field some questions on the show, we would love that too.
Something you want to see on the show, something we're missing that you'd like to hear.
Yeah, and one thing I really want to get into, the more we begin to have guests here soon again, ahead of time, have some questions ready. You know, if we want any questions prepared, something specific. I do intend to try to get good ahead of time of letting you know about the next show, so you'll know who the next guest is. I'll have a bio posted up, assuming we have a bio, or at least let you know about guests coming on. So if you do have any questions to compile related ahead of time, we'll do our best to try to get them asked for you guys. So again, I think we're good. Mike, you got anything for the evening?
No, that's it.
Yeah.
Enjoyed it. Watch it.
All right. Well, thanks a lot, guys. Again, thanks for tuning in, and we hope you have a great day. See ya.
Take care.
I feel like I was lucky to have the tumor, or else I wouldn't be doing any of this.